Dr. Bahiyyah Muhammad, Associate Professor and Director of Grad Studies at Howard University. She is also a co-PI or principal investigator on two external grants right now, which is incredibly impressive. But we're going to start first with your early career in criminal justice and how much you love teaching. Why is teaching criminology and social justice more than just a means for young people to get a job?
Thank you so much, Beth, for this question. It's a wonderful question because oftentimes when individuals think about social justice, it's kind of like this hashtag, and individuals are talking about it all over the place, and programs are popping up, here and there. For me, social justice is everything, and it's very, very fulfilling and humbling to be able to teach this sort of a curriculum, specifically at a historically Black college and university, where many of the students are taking these courses and using them with applied sociology and applied criminology to actually go into their communities and solve real issues, starting with themselves. And so for me, in teaching some of these courses, for example, my crime and justice behind the wall, where individuals have an opportunity to take class alongside incarcerated individuals, it gives them an opportunity to look at their own communities and their own families. And it really allows for a curriculum where what they're reading in the textbook comes off of the pages and it actually comes to life, not in a way that's traumatizing, not in a way that hurts, but in a very practical way, to be able to really bring in Black joy, Black liberation into the course room through this particular readings and critical engagement and radical pedagogy has been really exciting. I have a lot of students that come and they talk about how they don't have individuals in their families that have ever been incarcerated, that they didn't know anyone that's ever been incarcerated. And through the course, being able to read about and utilizing the humanities as a way to get people to think about enduring questions in ways that's very realistic has been very beneficial for them. Some of them even go on to being public servants in law enforcement, in corrections, in research, organizations. And so it's been really exciting, even having some students that use, academia as a landscape for social justice in the courses that they teach. Oftentimes students find so much power in the curriculum that they're building and allowing students to read things that they may not necessarily have had access to. And seeing that as social justice is just as important as being on the front lines of a movement and initiative. So I've really enjoyed it.
So true, because it's almost trite to say, but they are the future. They are the future, and it has to keep going. And they have to know what's happened in the past, but they have to have that hope that the past is not the end. It's not the end of the story, and that we can make more progress. Love that. And I know you've always loved teaching, so
Yes.
and you've always brought a lot to it. So when you were an undergrad, you clearly already had this path in mind. How did you have the opportunity to go to South Africa, and what did you discover when you were over there?
This is such an interesting question because, of course, Rutgers University plays a huge role, in all of these components. One, as an undergraduate student at Rutgers, New Brunswick, I did the study abroad in South Africa at the University of Natal in Pietermaritzburg. And I remember taking criminal justice classes that were connected to my major in administration of justice. And I had an opportunity to intern at a criminal justice center in South Africa. And it just changed my life. It changed the way I saw family law. It changed the way I looked at even the curriculum that I was being taught at the time, really allowing for, a true understanding of what it really means when families are disconnected through mass incarceration, what it means to a child when a mother or father is incarcerated and their day to day, what are those actual collateral consequences? So at Rutgers as an undergrad, I had an opportunity to be able to learn all of the language and the theories that were connected, and being able to have that rich experience of studying abroad was definitely phenomenal. Even now, I bring students, graduate students, to Africa to explore the experiences of children of incarcerated parents on death row. And so I really utilize that study abroad experience in a lot of the courses, even that I teach now on both the undergraduate and graduate level. For example, my Policing Inside Out course, where I bring together Black millennials and chiefs of police to engage in conversation and community engagement trips together. They actually go to the National Museum of African American History and Culture together. They go to the Emmett Till casket within the museum, and they talk about what it means from these two different components. I got that from the study abroad perspective. I got from this experience of being uncomfortable or being in a land that is not your native to where you're from. It builds this kind of curiosity. And if you connect in theory and frameworks and readings of primary works into that space of unfamiliarity, it builds consciousness and it builds a knowledge that is usable. And, I got that specifically from Rutgers University as an undergrad. They push students, and their study abroad office was just phenomenal. On the graduate level, I had an opportunity to do a lot of traveling as well as a graduate student. Many programs, specifically at Rutgers School of Criminal Justice, we often had professors that would recommend, and provide, funding for opportunities that they saw fit for students. And so I took advantage of all of those sort of things, and still now are finding that I'm using Africa as a landscape to bring in not only higher education and learning, but also research studies and qualitative understandings of the lived experiences of those individuals in the criminal justice systems over there.
Wow. That's interesting that you just brought that up, because I was going to ask you later on in the interview, because I remember you were one of the first people who started teaching classes inside a prison in New Jersey, right? Tell us about that program that you were working with early on.
Yes, I was working at the time, it was the College Bound Consortium. And the College Bound Consortium ran out of Drew University. And that really was an opportunity to be able to create a prison education program. And it was phenomenal that I served when I've completed the PhD at Rutgers as the director of the College Bound Consortium. And so I oversaw that program that turned into New Jersey STEP. And I remember the conversations with the dean at the time, Dean Clear, because he was a professor at John Jay when I was doing my master's there. And so I remember coming to him and saying, there are all of these schools in New Jersey that are working and have an interest in higher education in prison for incarcerated individuals. We should create something to bring all of these individuals together. And that was the start of that kind of proposal and engaging. I was trained early on to go in and teach inside of carceral spaces. And I remember as a graduate assistant at Rutgers University, still working towards my doctorate, I was able to take students, undergraduate students, to tour Northern State Prison, Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, and the likes. And that really was the start of being able to build this kind of comfortability, confidence, and also experiential learning curriculum that then could be replicated in so many different spaces. I remember the faces on the students, the undergraduate students, who oftentimes would be in tears. And oftentimes it became an opportunity when they visited the facility to say, in whispering, my dad is incarcerated. And, I've been talking to him through calls, collect calls for the last 3 years, and never knew that this is what it looked like where he was actually sitting. They begin to have like flashbacks of all of these sort of things. And that really began something that I continued to build professionally. And it was something that I knew that from then on, I would never teach a class without having that component in it. And I remember even as an undergrad at Rutgers, my professor, Dr. Welch, who still is a professor at Rutgers in New Brunswick, took us into a prison, and the class was called Prisons and People. And I said, this will be a phenomenal thing to have a 15-week course as opposed to just one visit. And that's what I've continued to build upon.
I've been following your trajectory. I mean, it's quite your trajectory. It's been quite incredible, and I see how much the early education experiences have continued, and you've been building on them. So let's talk about the project with the Mellon Foundation, the Just Futures Award. What does this project entail?
Thank you so much for asking. The Social Justice Consortium through Howard University, through the funding, generous funding of the Mellon Foundation, is a Just Futures grant. And it really is an opportunity for institutions to identify and have projects that change the trajectory of what we know about justice for the next like 50 years, right? So really thinking of kind of these it's kind of like a MacArthur Genius kind of frameworking and thought process where, our project, which is the only HBCU funded across the nation, looks at challenging who is worthy of being educated and who is worthy of being the educator. And so it really brings social justice curriculums and courses to individuals that are incarcerated, individuals that are in detention facilities, high school dual enrollment students, veterans, senior citizens, and really looking for ways of bringing the resources to those individuals that don't have access to the ivory tower, and really allowing for them to be able to use a curriculum that gives practical information, that they see themselves in the information and the content that's being presented, but also that brings in liberation and strategy for being able to solve the solutions to social ills in their own families, things that they're dealing with just for themselves and or in their communities. And so part of it was to build this social justice consortium. And this consortium is built up of HBCUs across the nation, and really trying to hold hands and build capacity with HBCUs whose humanities programs are under threat. Because we know that Black humanities, Black joy, Black liberation is so important, and really trying to use this project as a way to move forward. We recently launched Social Justice Week, which gave us an entire week to look at many issues within the communities that are directly affected, looking at criminal legal reform. And so this gave us an opportunity to really look at courses and pedagogy, but practices and programs all across the nation. Right now, we have 22 books, 22 courses on the books that look specifically at social justice issues. For example, mass incarceration and the Black family, looking at school to prison pipeline, the history of the war on drugs. So really trying to get into ways in which the curriculum provides individuals through a 1 credit opportunity engagement with the literature and the readings in ways that they typically would not have access to. And all of this is free. The grant allows for all of this to be free. And so it's very exciting.
I wish I could talk to you all day. I mean, you were working on so many things, and it is really incredible. I know we have to end soon, but I wanted to talk about quickly before my last question. So this is the second to last question about this Just Futures, and you just mentioned high schools. We find that our students who come into freshman year of college, they want to major in criminal justice, but they know very little about the system. And that, of course, goes for people who never even study criminal justice. This is something that I think, and you probably agree, we need to start bringing into the curricula of K through 12, because there's so much misconception and just so many false stories about the criminal justice system out there, and people getting their information from watching drama on TV, that we really need to start bringing this in and making it something that younger people start learning about. Is that something that you guys are going to be working on?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up because it is really needed. Many of the students that come in, regardless of where they're matriculating at colleges and universities on day one in a criminal justice class, they're like, I'm here because I love law and order.
Right.
I am interested in criminal minds. And it is built off of a lot of the things that individuals are seeing on television. I implemented a project last year, college and high school. And so my principles of criminal justice class this year is being offered to 250 high school students across the nation. They're receiving 3 credits for it. And we're learning about, intro to corrections. We're learning about what they would have in a criminology course. And they're learning about theories. They're learning about courts, police, and corrections, and the different components of the actual system. And they get really excited. They're just like, wait, that's why this makes sense. They learn about strain theory with Robert Merton, and they're just like, yes, in America, there is this emphasis on, the goal of making money without focusing in on the means. And they learn about labeling theory and they learn about social bond theory. And it really causes them to really begin to become critically reflective of their own communities and experiences with this, very vast and robust and growing system. And so, absolutely, I think that these are things that need to come into the school environments early on, especially in communities that are plagued by mass incarceration, where there are, individuals that are part of this kind of the theory of social disorganization, where, individuals are coming and going in and out of these systems. And youth have questions, and there's so many individuals that are impacted by school resource officers as it relates to things that they're seeing just in their schools, and they're not able to have the social capital to begin to speak on it. But a criminology or a administration of justice course can give them that terminology and language, and at the same time it gives them a head start to say, this is 6 credits that you don't have to pay for when you go to whatever school it is. And you can decide that this can be your major, or it can be a minor, or guess what? It could also be an elective. And so I think that we definitely need to think about it. And there's a strong desire with all of the crime scene shows that are popping up. And we know that they're very popular and they do really well. Let's start educating some of the youth and giving them the terminology to be able to help individuals in their communities that are directly impacted. I think that's definitely a great way to go.
That's great. Absolutely. All right, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
What do you miss the most about Rutgers and Newark and Rutgers Newark?
Man, that's such a difficult question because there's so much to just miss. And one of the things that I would have to say is the community. Rutgers Newark is right centered, downtown, where, I miss having access to be able to go right into the community and engage in community participatory research. At the same time that you're engaging with, community, you have access to law enforcement and you have access to corrections with Northern State right there. It's kind of like the best location to be able to really conduct ethnographic work in that I do, and embedding yourself in the community in order to understand it. And I think many people don't understand how that contributes to your access, but also your interpretation and analysis of your findings. Being able to have been so close to the community that I was collecting the data in meant that if I had a question, I didn't have to Google something first. I could actually go out and engage with the community and grapple with some of my findings as we're analyzing and thinking about what it ultimately means. And so I definitely do miss that close-knit kind of connection with so many members of the community that Rutgers has strong relationships with in and out of the academy itself. That's definitely something that is going to forever be missed.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll come back and visit.
Definitely, definitely. I'm
Well,
looking
thank you
forward
so
to
much.
it.
Your work is really impressive. I'm just really proud to have known you back at school, and I'm
Yeah.
really excited about everything you're doing. And keep it up. I know you will. And I hope that we can do this again sometime.
Yes, are you? Rah rah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Bahia.